I'm excited to bring you a new game review. Today we're going to be checking out the hardcore open world survival game developed by CreepyJar called Green Hell. It just left early access with a major 1.0 release on September 5th, 2019, which came with the complete story mode. It is currently available on Steam for $24.99 USD, and as of this review, which is September 8th, 2019, it has a very positive rating on Steam. It is a hardcore open world survival game which takes place in the Amazonian rainforest. It features a crafting and building system alongside of hunting, psychological, and survival mechanics. Now, this review will be based on whether I believe it is worth the current price point and is it worth investing your time playing. Also, this review will include no spoilers to the story mode, and it will be based on my personal opinion. And before we go any further, I want to clarify that no outside sponsorships are tied to this review. I did, however, receive a free copy in order to review it, but that's it. First of all, I want to go ahead and note that this game is not for the everyday Fortnite player. Instead, it's kind of targeted for those who prefer a challenging but open experience with the story to guide you through progression of the game. Now, obviously, Green Hell is a survival game, but what does it bring that is fresh to the survival genre? In Green Hell, hunger is actually broken down into three categories, which are protein, fats, and carbs. Then there's a fourth category of your nutrition, which is the water or thirst level. Now, allowing any of these levels to deplete will affect your overall stamina and health, so you need to carefully monitor them pretty much at all times. Personally, I believe this is to be perfect. It wasn't overly complicated, but not too simple for a hardcore survival game. It isn't as robust as something as you would find in something like Scum that has like crazy nutritional information, but it's definitely more advanced than the basic food and water mechanics that you get in a lot of the other survival games. Another feature that I thought was kind of interesting and fresh was the Sanity Level. Now, it's nothing completely new, as it's pretty similar to what you see in Don't Starve and Don't Starve Together. Eating raw food or items not good for your health or taking damage from the various dangers Green Hell brings you will actually affect what's called your sanity. The lower your sanity, the harder surviving gets. It's a very similar mechanic to Don't Starve, as when it lowers, you start beginning to hear voices around you, and identifying reality becomes much harder. And it actually ties into the story pretty well, but I don't want to spoil that, obviously, so we're going to kind of skip over that. But it's a pretty cool mechanic. I like it. And lastly, another feature in the game that I enjoyed was the physical condition mechanic. I thought it was kind of interesting. Not many games do it the way Green Hell does. So let me go ahead and paint the picture for you. In Green Hell, the physical condition mechanic, you are able to inspect all four of your limbs and address whatever ailments you have. So whether it be leeches, worms, or abrasions, there's many different things that can happen to you. You can look at every one of your limbs and kind of identify it and use that to put bandages or dig out the worm or whatever it may be. However, I did have one gripe with this mechanic. It seemed like every 30 seconds I was forced to have to check all four of my limbs because I was getting leeches, and I'm not being over dramatic here. Literally about every 30 seconds you would be notified that you had leeches, and unless you removed them, you actually lose sanity. So you would walk somewhere, then you'd have to stop and check your left arm, your right arm, your left leg, your right leg, rinse and repeat. And I just thought that the amount of times a leech got on me could be reduced, and maybe their damage buff to kind of offset that change, but I feel like that needs to be addressed because it really, I don't know, just after about 100 times it kind of ruined the experience for me, and it just wasn't adding to the value of the game. But that's a little thing that could be, kind of squashed out in a future update. Nothing major there. The rest of the features that you see in Green Hell I would categorize as average or above average. Nothing else is gonna be completely different, but nothing's bad either, so that's good. But everything else you'll see, you probably will have run across them in other titles such as The Forest, Scum, Rust, and Don't Starve, which are the games I'll kind of will be comparing this to throughout the review for my verdict of whether you should buy it. Very quickly, I would like to go over the graphics, although you can probably tell from this video and other gameplay trailers that the graphics are pretty good. They're definitely not next-gen AAA worthy, but they're really, really good, especially when you consider the $25 price point. So I have no complaints with the graphics themselves, and I felt really immersed in the setting as I traversed through the map. You can easily notice the attention to small details that they put throughout the artwork. With every item that you have to touch, it's nice to be able to really see the details of them, and they look very similar to their real-life counterparts. parts. And I think that's important with a hardcore survival game. Immersion plays a very important factor, and it adds to the gameplay. So the graphics in Green Hell do accomplish that, so I give it a thumbs up there. Now, I did have some issues with the graphics, and it was mainly towards their optimization. To run this game at a consistent 60 frames per second, it's going to require a high-end PC, or you're going to have to seriously downgrade the graphics settings, which obviously it won't look good then. And then if you have a medium or low-end PC like I do, you're probably going to sit around 30 to 45 FPS, which, like I said, is what I experienced. But it still wasn't terrible. As long as you're getting 30, it's not too bad. And I played on high graphics settings. But just make sure you refer to these system requirements before you buy the game to make sure you can run it. Another little thing I want to go over is the sound of the game. In a survival game, and especially Green Hell, sound is crucial. And in Green Hell, everything has a distinct and very clear sound, which lets you know what you're about to encounter. So when you are playing, be sure to listen for a rattle from like a rattlesnake, because those pesky critters are easily to accidentally step on, and they're going to leave you a nasty bite that is hard to recover from. And that's just one example, but there's many other animals that give off sounds of when you're near them, and I thought that it was a pretty good job. It was nothing extraordinary, like if you compared it to the sound design in Hunt Showdown, which I know is not a survival game, but just kind of give you a difference in quality. I would say it's above average, if not good. Now let's move on to the UI. The UI in Green Hell is not invasive at all, and I really like that. I think with a survival game, it's important to really hammer down on immersion, and that's done through non-invasive UIs, great graphics, great sound, and smooth gameplay. And the UI wasn't invasive at all. You barely see it on your screen, and what you do see is easy to read and simple. But I did have a major gripe with the UI in reference to the navigation and getting accustomed to it. Now, this may have been something that was kind of personal to me, and you know how, some things just click for some people, and then it just may not click for you. But whenever I played, I had a major gripe with the navigation of the crafting menu and the notebook together. The way it works is some items are craftable through the crafting menu, in which you place various items down, and then once you put the right combination of items, you can then craft it, similar to Minecraft in a way. But then there's also buildings like structures that are in your notebook, and so if you wanted to build any of those, you had to open up your notebook, click on them, and then drag them out onto the screen to put kind of like a blueprint down. And it was kind of hard for me at first to figure out that distinction, I guess, and so I kind of fumbled through and trying to find it. That was my one gripe. And then another gripe that I had was when interacting, the text was very small and it was very easy to misclick. And since there was no confirmation, I found myself always accidentally drinking water or doing an action that I wasn't wanting to do. So I was drinking dirty water and obviously getting parasites, and that's not good for survival. So I wish maybe, although I don't want it to be much bigger, maybe some kind of confirmation or reorganizing that stuff so you don't make a critical mistake like that by misclicking. That happened to me so many times. Maybe I'm just an idiot though. But before we get to actual gameplay and we kind of discuss my overall experience, I do want to cover the story. As I mentioned, there won't be any spoilers because most of the people that are watching this video are deciding whether to buy the game or not, so I really don't want to cover the story in any shape or form, because I think that's where you're going to get the most value out of this game, is by playing the story. But the way the story works, it's going to first introduce you through it's going to walk you through the game mechanics and the UI, and then also give you a little information on why you're there and what you're doing, and then an event will happen, and then you're going to be officially done with the tutorial or introduction portion of the story. And then you're kind of left out in the open world in which you have to survive and explore. And as you explore and then follow your objectives, the story will unlock and progress. The flow is very similar to how it's done in The Forest if you ever played that. So expect the same type of story delivery that you got in The Forest with Green Hell, but obviously a completely different story. Now, as for the story itself, I personally found it very entertaining and compelling, and it left me wanting to continue from start to finish in order to see it to the end. And that's pretty much all I will say it. I'm not going to say it's the greatest story ever, but you're definitely going to be entertained with it, and it will allow you to progress through the game and want to play. So, story aside, all the nitpicking aside, what about gameplay, and is this game inevitably worth buying? That's what we're going to talk about now. If Green Hell is your first hardcore survival game, then you're going to be both in for a hard time and a treat. Green Hell does not do any hand-holding, which personally I like, but for some that may not be ideal. So keep that in mind, and keep what you like in terms of video games in mind, because it does not hold your hand at all. And I'll give you an example. Besides a basic tutorial, you're kind of left figuring things out yourself in the game through trial and error. Like I said, I prefer a difficult challenge. Now there are difficulty settings, so you can kind of tune the game in terms of what type of difficulty you want. I particularly liked a difficult challenge, so I chose the second to last difficulty, and I died many times and struggled to figure out what to do in certain situations until I found the one piece that I was missing or the one bit of information that I needed. And sometimes it took me not very long, and then there were certain situations or things that I had to figure out that took me freaking forever. And I never used a wiki or the online resource, so I just tried to figure it out through the game because that's the experience I wanted, and plus I knew I was going to make this review and I wanted to try to do it without any outside resources. So I could see that people could maybe get stuck and this could be infuriating for them, but for others it could be very rewarding. For me, it was a little bit of both. Most of the time it was rewarding, but there was one instance that I struggled and it was infuriating, but I finally figured it out. But if you do get stuck, there is, like I said, the wiki online, and it'll have all the info you'll need to make it through whatever part you're at, so kind of use that at your discretion. Your first few hours in Green Hell, figuring out the ins and out of the game, are going to be the most fun and rewarding. Learning how to survive and what dangers are around you is both daunting and exciting. Unfortunately, once you know exactly what to do for all these situations, all the dangers, and how to stay alive, the fun kind of wears off and you realize that the world around you isn't that complex as what it appeared when you first jumped in. And so you kind of go from crawling to sprinting very quickly instead of the crawling, walking, and sprinting progression, if that makes sense. But basically what this means is replayability will be a big concern because there are small amounts of dangerous animals and situations and things you can build. Once you've encountered them and dealt with them, doing it a second time is just going to be much easier and less rewarding. Like I said, base building is very basic. You can build everything very quickly, and then you're kind of left with nothing else to do. So you're like, what now? And that's kind of the dilemma you'll be in after you completed the story and done everything. So now for my official verdict. For my verdict, I believe Green Hell is a buy for anyone interested in a challenging survival game with a story behind it. This is where you will feel that you got your money's worth. The feeling of cheating death in this game after escaping a jaguar or surviving those pesky rattlesnakes is pretty thrilling, and also knowing that death will send you back to your last save along with the great story, it will all keep you entertained and playing for many hours. However, once I completed the story, I found it difficult to want to open the game and play it again because I feel I did everything and there's nothing else to do or see. So if you're looking for a game to just dump hours upon hours into, then you may want to pass on this one. Now, I hate comparing games to each other, but I feel like Green Hell is a very close comparison to The Force, but it also is lacking co-op at the time of this review. Co-op is something that seems to be planned in the next update, so keep a lookout on that. But with Green Hell, you can expect a very similar experience you got with The Force if you played that, with a few different mechanics, a different but great story, and obviously a different setting. So with all that said, for $25, you get a great experience surviving and learning and completing that story, and that's why I think it's worth it. If you have a weekend or you need to burn some time and you really like story-based games, but also the survival, I think this is going to be a great one for you. Definitely a pickup, and as long as they keep updating it, we may see more content, and if they have DLC and they add to the story, it could be worth checking out later. But that is all for this review. I hope you guys found it helpful and informative. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel and thumbs up the video, and I will see you in the next one.